separate the real from the fake. See, we got to get back to love. If we get back to love, then that's when we're going to get back to us.
Seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when you're...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of People Empowerment, where we would strive to change the conditions in our neighborhoods. As always, today is going to be a very informative show, a very special guest. But before I go to the guest, I'd like to remind you out there to go to our website, People Empowerment website. Go to the website, check out some of the shows, and more importantly now, we need for people, for the public, to join in to our movement to change the conditions in our neighborhood. You know, last week we had Antoine Thompson on, and we were talking about jobs, jobs, jobs. And what we need for you to do is I need you to watch the television show, to go on the website, and to actually register. We're going to set up a registration where people can register to vote, where we can start unifying, where we all can become one team together for a movement for power to the people. How do you create power to the people? You galvanize the people. You get them together and you focus on 1, 2, 3 common goals. And the power is in the number. So how do we achieve our power? It's for you to come to the website, to register, to join the team. We all become one team to get on board. It's so very important. So that's why I tell you, go to the website. We have been getting an incredible amount of hits to the point now we decided this is what we need to do so that we can unify together. So today's show, again, I told you, is very important because this show is about a woman who is a true legacy in our community. We're going to talk about a woman who is the reason why the Apollo Media Center is here today. So today we have here, our special guest is Dwayne Terry. How you doing?
Doing good, brother.
DT.
This
is DT from Late Night Noise. Y'all remember him, the man who used to take it right to the streets, you know, to get the pulse and the beat of the people. He also, at one time, was very heavily active in things that go on down here at the Apollo. He knows how it's ran, he knows how it's done, and he doesn't live here anymore, but we have him here in town right now today. So, DT, I just want you to tell us all about it, man. Where you been, what you been doing. Who are you, man?
Born and raised right here in Buffalo, New York. Born up the street from here, Cold Spring. You know, on the radio, my name was a Cold Spring cousin.
Cold Spring cousin.
So I was born on Southampton. You know, lived on Maston, now live, you know, on Utica when I'm here. And so this area here is home for me. Right. You know, ground zero for me. Regardless of where I go, this is ground zero.
Buffalo is ground zero.
Buffalo's ground zero, but Cold Spring is ground zero.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know, where I'm born is where I still stay, and I was raised here. But I've been many places. You know, in between time, my mother moved us in the middle of high school. My mother picked up and moved us to California. So I ended up finishing my high school career out in California, and then got into doing video production. Started doing a music video just to prove that I could do one for myself. Showed it to a friend. He liked it. He told me to show it to another friend. They liked it. They wanted one, and then it snowballed. Every time someone seen the video, they wanted somebody knew someone who wanted one. And so I fell into this career of producing and directing music videos, and didn't go to school for it, but understood that it was a lot I had to learn at the same time, but I had an opportunity that I was going to take advantage of. And so it was at a time when, you know, the Bay Area music scene was coming alive, and there was a lot of artists out there who were getting, you know, independent contracts and small record deals.
California Bay Area?
California Bay Area, E42, Short, Tony, Drew Down, the Loonies, everybody except Hammer. I worked with almost everybody in the Northern Bay Area except MC Hammer.
Wow.
And so that kind of snowballed into a career. And every time I finished one video, I was doing another one, and sometimes juggling two. And so at that point, you know, I was moving on and going down this path to, you know, really create movies. Everybody thought that, okay, you're going to be the next Spike Lee, you're the next Robert Townsend. You know, these are the people they were comparing me to then because they were the hot guys at the time. And so they look like that because when you start off doing music videos and it starts doing small budget videos, and then you start doing more and your budget gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just a matter of time before you start doing movies. A lot of people make their way into movies by starting with videos. And so I was going down that route, which is something I didn't really plan to do. It just kind of fell in my lap. I was blessed. Then I get a call from Beverly Gray, who tells me that your grandmother has to go under the knife. Now, my grandmother is and was the most important relationship in my life today.
Hold on, Beverly Gray,
Beverly-
former councilwoman at large.
Beverly Gray.
Beverly Gray, okay.
My mother and her sister, her only sister, name is Beverly Gray. And so Beverly is I'm her first nephew. She's my first and only, my aunt, you know, on my mother's side of the family. And she was the one who helped raise me. Even when she lived in Philly, she was the one who would bring me out to Philly during the summers to stay with her and my cousin, and you know, and try to make sure that we were growing up in a way that we were. She always tried to remind us about being a man. She was always telling me, "You're the man of the family. You need to, you know, take control of things when it comes to the, you know, your family, your sisters. You need to be in control of things. You need to make sure you protect your family." And at the time, I didn't know, but she was always really strong about that. So, you know, we go on. Life goes on. I'm in California. I get the call from her. And at that point, my grandmother, again, was the most important thing to me on the planet. You know, she showed me the kind of love that nobody else have ever shown me. Unconditional love.
Unconditional
Things that she didn't even want, she would buy me if I wanted a motorcycle for a long time. She dread me ever having a motorcycle for fear I might get in an accident. But when I brought my first motorcycle, guess who helped me buy it? Grand. You know, that's the kind of love. I mean, you know, but and so to think that she may go into this knife and it may not come out to, you know, really in a situation that's, you know, conducive to our whole family structure scared me, because I hadn't had a chance to spend a lot of time. I had been gone 10 years, you know, and so I dropped that whole career and just came right back to Buffalo. And when I got back, I didn't know what I was going to do. My agent and them said, "Hey, if you move back to Buffalo, there's no music video business in Buffalo. There's no record labels in Buffalo. There's no videos in Buffalo. If you want to shoot real video and film, there's no film companies in Buffalo. You're going to have to get your film equipment from New York City or Toronto if you want to do it. But if you want to do it, here's a contact, a lady named Laura Schwartz. She'll put you on. She'll represent you. She'll get you jobs." So I get back to Buffalo, and I'm sitting back around the family. I'm feeling like I like this, being with family finally. And I decided that maybe it's time to change gears. You know, maybe I really should try something new. So I went straight down to public access about 3 months after I moved back. I walked in there. I said, "I'll just come here to volunteer my time. And all I want is, when you don't need me, if I can just, you know, sit on your editing equipment and edit some of my video stuff that I brought back with me. I just wanted to be able to continue being creative." And so I did. I did whatever they asked me to do. I went on a few shoots with the late Kevin Pearson, and started working with him and Michelle and Stephanie. And public access was going through a transition, because at that time there was some misappropriation of funds, and there was this whole hoopla going on as to what was going to happen to public access.
Funny thing, misappropriation of funds at public access.
At public access.
Okay.
Picture that.
Picture that. Misappropriation of funds at public access.
Yeah, and so, and to be honest, what happened was it was a real situation where it wasn't like someone stole money. It was just that money that came in was being used for public access, and the person who was in charge was bypassing the board and making decisions that would benefit public access, and not allowing the board to take that money and do what they think should be done with it, but yet take it and get equipment so we can continue doing public access. And because she did that, she created enemies, and they then tried to turn against her, and they looked at anything and everything she did and used it against her. And
Now that's when public access was over in LaSalle, right?
Right.
Okay, now how did it come to be? You know, because you got the inside scoop. You Beverly Gray's first nephew, and so you really have the inside scoop. You know, we've talked a little bit. You were here initially when this project whole took place. I wonder if you could, you know, get into that a little bit. Tell us about that a little.
Well, when I first came back to Buffalo, my first TV show I produced for public access was a show called Buffalo at Large. I produced a show for Beverly before I even produced Late Night Noise.
And that was Buffalo at Large?
Buffalo at Large. It was the first time a sitting council person had a weekly television show. And she was the first one to use public access to communicate with people in the city. And her focus was to try to teach people and show people how government works for them, how to use government to work to their advantage, who to call when they're not getting city services, how the city government is structured, and how you need to understand this so you can get action from people.
Kind of reminds me of myself, a people's advocate. She was the people's advocate.
She was an advocate. Well, she wasn't a politician. She was an advocate. She was a person who was an advocate who was talked into becoming a politician. She wasn't someone who dreamed of politics.
She dreamed of helping the people.
Crystal Peoples talked her into becoming
really?
In the kitchen, story I hear my grandmother tell me, my grandmother, Crystal Peoples, and Beverly was in the kitchen one day scaling fish. My aunt was dedicated to her Friday fish fries. Go get fresh fish, they scale it, they fry it, they cook it, they hang out, and that's what they do. And it was Crystal who talked my aunt into really going for it. And that's kind of why, you know, I have a certain love for Crystal, is because of that connection. Although, you know, after she's gone, we haven't seen much of Crystal, you know, but, you know, to us, you know, she inspired my aunt to do what she did for that. And so it's you know, and I send a shout out to Crystal Peoples for that. But so she got involved. Which, when we started doing a TV show.
Well, well, not to cut you off, but how did it actually start here at the Apollo?
Yeah, here's where it's going.
Oh, okay,
so we're doing a TV show, and so she's now going out, and people are saying, you know, they love her, they love what she's doing, they love seeing her, so on and so forth. And one time we was having a conversation, and she asked me about, you know, what I was doing. About, tell me about what you was doing in California. So I had to give her a rundown what I was doing, where I worked at, the kind of equipment I worked around. And she said, because I have a vision. She said she had a dream. She had a dream of creating a telecommunications center on the east side of Buffalo. And this was the location. And but at the time, she didn't really have all the pieces. But she knew she wanted a radio station, a TV station, and a library right next door to each other, all hooked up so that they can all communicate through each other. And so she was working with a group of women. I think it was 50 women with a vision. And one of the women had expressed that she can find the money to get it started. So I think this one lady went to California, was supposed to come back with the money, the seed money to get this thing started, but came back empty-handed. So then Beverly went and started looking, you know, at money that comes down through the city's coffers, and try to figure out, is there money to do this in a situation in the city? And so she found that I believe it was 2.4 million is what she found that was allocated, you know, to build this and start this thing. And so as she went forward, you know, trying to do so, she came to me and she said, well, what do you think? I said, well, you know, I haven't built any studios, but I've worked in many studios. She said, well, come to a meeting with me. So I go down to City Hall meeting, and I go into this meeting, and it's James Pitts and a whole room full of people. I have no idea who the hell they are. And I'm sitting there feeling like, what am I doing here, right? They put up on the board, they had 3 blueprints of what this place could be. And so they're sitting around, and they're like, well, we got these plans to build. Beverly found this money. We got these plans and this idea to build this thing, but none of us are end users. And the people who are running public access now won't come to any of the meetings. And so she said, well, this is my nephew. He's from California, and he works in studios. He knows a little bit about it. And I remember them saying, well, you know, young man, well, what can you tell us about it? And so I looked at the 3, you know, blueprints on the wall, and I kind of said, well, I don't know nothing about building these buildings or building it, but I've worked in many studio facilities doing what I did. I said, but one thing you want to do, if you want to build a facility, you want to build one that, you know, if you're going to have multiple uses, you want to make sure they all can connect for one use. And it's one layout I said, this is a great one here, because you have 2 studios, edit bays, and a playback. If you can wire them all to work together in its largest form, you could do a production that, you know, you can have a studio shoot here, a studio shoot in another studio, and you can have someone in the edit suites, and they can all work at the same time to do one live production, you know, and then go out live. And there was one blueprint that I thought was best for that layout. So I finished saying what I said about it, and talked about editing facilities, and talked about editing rooms and editing equipment and TV equipment that I've been around. And they said, okay, you're it. I'm like, what you mean? We need you to sit with all the architects and explain to them how this thing is supposed to work. It's going to be built, but we need to know how it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to function. So I ended up spending almost 1.5 years sitting with all the architects, the engineers, the HVC folks, and anytime they had a question as to how this building is supposed to operate, I was the one that's supposed to come up with the answers.
This Apollo.
The Apollo. I got blueprints at home that I got paperwork that shows every meeting I've ever been. You know, and the sad thing was that at the end of that 2 years of sitting in with Mr. Coles, Robert Coles attests to this, that I had to meet in his office many times. That's where the meetings were taking place. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just, whenever they talked about what they're going to do, they're like, well, how is this supposed to work? What's supposed to happen in this room? Well, this is going to be the studio. There's going to be lights. It's going to be heat. You can't have a loud running, you know, air conditioning unit in this room, because there will be open microphones. There will be people talking and those kind of things. So I had to give that kind of information. And so when it was all said and done, come to find out that there was a line of a consultant that I didn't get money. That, you know, I played the role of consultant but didn't get the money. So I went to James Pitts, like, you know, hey, what happened? What's, you know, I see this. Oh, well, you know, he blamed it on the architect. So I go to the architect, well, what's up with that? He blamed it on the council member. You know, and so I sat back and said, wow, the first time I get a chance to work with all these, you know, these black men, these powerful black men, you know, I get shafted. You know, but that was cool. I said, you know what, I'm going to chalk that up to the game. You'll never get me again. You know, and then I knew who I was dealing with in this city, the kind of people I was dealing with in this city, because I was excited to work with, you know, Robert Coles and James Pitts, thinking I'm going to learn a lot. This is going to be great for me. But in the end, you know, I walked away with a bad taste in my mouth because, you know, I gave all that time and got nothing for it, but the opportunity to still, you know, work here.
Okay.
And so Beverly had the vision, and she wanted Waffle next door. She wanted this here. She wanted the library there. She wanted to be connected through fiber optics, so that if you needed to research something, you could go on the computer and through fiber optics link to the library and have access to all the files and stuff that's there. And if you wanted to do some live broadcast from the radio or have the radio do a live broadcast, we would have cameras that could assist in that. And so you can go do a live radio show and have a camera or have a feed that comes in here and be broadcast on TV too. So her plan was grand. And she wanted a business incubator located on here so that small businesses get a chance to kind of come in and develop their businesses and grow. So her vision was really to try to bring, I guess, this area back to some kind of prominence, because when she grew up, she remembered Jefferson being a very lively place.
Yes.
The problem was that, you know, she was a at-large member, not the Masson District Council member.
Who was the Maston District Council member at the time?
At the time, I believe it was Byron. It was Byron and then Antoine. After Byron and Antoine.
Right.
And there were some problems because Beverly, although she was charged with, you know, being a council member for the whole city, you know, her heart was really in her community where she was from.
Okay.
But in order for her to do things here, she had to fight with the sitting district council members because they kind of felt like she's upstaging them.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so there was this rift always there because of that entity, you know, her being at large and there's being someone here who's supposed to be in charge of what happens in this district alone. And so she fought through that, and she had to have some very, you know, harsh conversations with some people in order to push for this thing to happen. At one point, this place stalled during the building phase, and you know, and it just stopped for like 2-3 months.
Wow.
And I went and told her what happened. I said, well, ain't nobody's working on the Apollo, and I haven't seen anyone here for 3 months. So we went in her office, and she made a call. We went downstairs. We talked to the guy in the engineering department. I forget the guy's name. He was in a wheelchair. And he told us he was told by the district council member to just hold off on that project until they hear from him. And so she wasn't told that the project stopped. She had to find out through me that they stopped building the project. So when she found out, she then had to go to the district council member, and they had a very tense conversation about what happened. And I wasn't privy to the conversation. I sat outside the door, but I know it was hot and heated. And Beverly, whenever she gets excited and upset, you know, she's come this close to crying. And whenever I heard her there, I come this close to fighting. You know, I mean, it's just a natural instinct. You know, she's my aunt, but she's like a woman that I'm charged to protect. That's my family member. So if you're gonna, you know, get her upset, you're gonna automatically get me upset too. But you know, so I kind of had to watch her and deal with that. But she fought through it, and then eventually, you know, when the time came, her illness got worse. She was a 13-year survivor of cancer. But I think when she began to run for mayor, the schedule that you have to keep to go to all these meetings before you even win, you know, really wore down. She never got a chance to rest.
So Ms. Beverly Grace, she ran for mayor against Mr. Masiello, was it?
Yes.
Okay, and in the process of her running for mayor, she actually succumbed to her disease and ended up passing away?
Our family, we got together as a family intervention and tried to sit down and told her, don't do this. Take care of yourself. We need you. Really? You know, because we knew. But what we didn't take into account is that she may have known that, you know, she has limited time, and it's now or never for her. And one thing she didn't want to do, she didn't want to let Masiello run unopposed. And so she felt like she had to run, and she felt like it was now or never for her to run. So she ran against family wishes. She decided she was going to do it. She'd already taken the charge to do it. And so those meetings, you know, going out at 10 and 11 o'clock at night every week and coming back and then having these coughing fits and, you know, your body and your lung, and then through the winter months and all this, it was just beating her up. And the family, we seen it, but we couldn't do anything about it because she had made up her mind that's what she was going to do. So
her passion to be the people's advocate, even for the top job, was the cause actually of her demise. Her love for the people, her love for the city.
We believe that. We believe that, and we believe that. She had some other feelings. She thought that there was something going on in City Hall with the asbestos, and she was fighting that too, about some of the offices in there, and that was something she thought. She felt She felt that she had the hardest time breathing when she was in her offices up in City Hall.
Wow.
And so she was doing things to try to figure out if these offices had something to do with her illness as well.
Very well could have been.
It could have been, yeah.
So now DT, so now once the Apollo was established and it was here and everything was running, you actually were a part of running this facility also for some years, isn't that correct?
Yes, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I came in, you know, after the Apollo was built.
We only got like 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So
Wow. For an hour?
Well, no, it's only a half hour.
Oh, okay. So after the Apollo was finished, I came in working with Tom Terapaki. Right before that happened, the transition from LaSalle Street, we moved over to the Langston Hughes, and then from the Langston Hughes we came here. And so when we came here, I was still intact from LaSalle Street to to I think it was BCTV when it was in the Langston Hughes, and came over here. And I was one of the only two, I think, people they kept on from that crew. And so the purpose was to kind of come in and just get things up and running. I ended up kind of just playing building manager to an empty building for a while, and then I realized this isn't what I want to do. Spend my summers sitting in the building and just sitting here. So I ended my contract and I walked away. And I tell you, Tom Terapaki was really cool. Never really gave me a hard time. Never really gave me any tough situation to deal with. He was really cool, and he allowed me to go away. They took me to lunch my last day, and so then I come back about a year or 2 years later to just do training. Come in and train people on how to use the equipment, because I found most of the equipment. I skipped this part. There was a time when I got sent to, when I wanted to go to the NAB in Vegas to locate the equipment that would eventually show up in the Apollo. I asked Tom Terapaki and people that if you would help subsidize my trip so I can go, because I had to, airline and hotel stay. They said no. Beverly went in her pocket and paid for me to be able to go to the NAB and find the money to go out there to spend a week. I came back and all the digital equipment, the non-linear editing, the DVC Pro, these lights, not these cameras, all this is stuff that I located in Vegas that year, and came back and had a list of stuff to be, that they could possibly buy to put into the Apollo. So when that came back and they ended up buying that equipment, I think Tom felt like, what, this guy's, serious about what he's talking about. He kind of kept me on. So I came in, I started training people, and through that training class, I got a chance to really, meet all the producers and work with producers, and then at the same time produce my show and continue doing what I was doing.
I made you aware the other day when we were talking yesterday about what's been going on here at the Apollo, and we've been really, back and forth with City Hall about the improvements that need to be done. And like me and you talked, a lot of the equipment that's here was here even when you were back, when it first started, and it's still here. You know what I mean? So we got a big thing going on, but I believe we've developed a certain rapport now with members of the Common Council, Damone Smith, Mr. Fontana, of course, Reverend Pridgeon, you know what I mean, and all these people who came from here, and doing here. So I believe that we're moving forward with progress. But originally there was always an account set aside just for funds, just to take care of this place when you first were here, right?
Well, I was never privy of that. I just knew what people talked about. I knew that it had to be there. I never knew what the numbers were.
Okay.
I never knew how the money was spent. I just knew that if they needed something, they would ask me to create a list of equipment that we can use, and I would do that.
Did you also act as the maintenance engineer here at that time with the equipment?
No, not really maintenance, no, because I didn't do any maintenance. I mean,
maintaining the equipment,
Yeah, to some extent, if something breaks that we can fix, we would try to fix it, because the process of trying to get something fixed takes so long.
Do you believe that this place in the state it's in now has been utilized to its ultimate capacity here?
No and yes. Now that I'm in Florida and I see how people there, you got it made here.
So we got it made here.
You got it made here.
Okay.
On two levels. One, it's still free to use.
Okay.
All right. And a lot of places that no longer exists. Two, the rules here, the things that you can get away with here compared to places where they're more strict. There are places in Florida where lawyers hover over public access production to see if anybody's doing something that could be legally deemed something that get them in trouble. And so there's a lot of things you can't do and can't say, and there's people watching you to do and say it. Here, it's a little bit more relaxed. And that's the difference with New York, maybe Florida, a Republican state and a Democratic state.
So we really got it relatively.
But what you got to do here is you got to stay on them, because politicians, I'm no fan of politicians, and working with Beverly, I got a chance to see it from the inside out. I'm no fan of politicians, and I do respect a lot of the black politicians as people who I know personally. But as politicians, it's a different story, because I understand the game of politics is dirty anyways.
It is a dirty game.
And I should tell Beverly, it's like you can't run on a basketball court with helmets and cleats on and talking about give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. You know, you can't be a stand-up, straight-up, honest politician and go play politics with people and expect them to be by your side when the other ones all got on shorts and sneakers. You know what I mean? It's not that kind of game. You can go in with your heart, but if you can't get the votes you need to make things happen, then you're not going to make anything happen. And the people on the side of you aren't voting with you because they're scared that you're going to expose them for what they're doing behind doors, then it's going to be a problem. So I think the Apollo, yes, you got to stay on those people who are in charge of seeing things through, because if you don't, they're not going to do anything. They're going to sit back and let it just run quietly, status quo. But
Now,
you got to do it in a way that is productive.
Correct.
You know what I
I
mean?
absolutely agree
You
with
gotta,
it.
you got to pick and choose your fights
Absolutely,
carefully.
and I also agree with that. You know, and that's why I've certainly toned myself down so that I could deal, you know, with the powers that be, because the ultimate end is that we have a better facility for production and distribution, you know, of information. It all goes back to Beverly Gray's dream of freedom of expression, you know what I mean, our First Amendment right, you know, to free speech. And so I do appreciate the fact that Buffalo is different than down there and that we do still have it free. You know what I mean? It's a very important thing, and that's why we got to keep these kumbaya moments up with the powers that be so that we can make things happen.
Yeah, you have to.
You know what I mean? But Beverly's dream, it seems to me, was absolutely that we would be able to use our First Amendment right, freedom of speech. Would you agree?
I would agree.
You
I
know?
wothis agree. She definitely was a great supporter of that. You know, and her dream and Apollo here and the library, and was, you know, proof that that's what she wanted to happen in this area. It's happening. Now, who carries on the torch after she's gone remains to be seen.
Very quickly, now we got 3 minutes left, so I want you to take a minute and talk about the building across the street, the old library that should have had Beverly Gray's name on it. I mean, only got 60 seconds, but tell us quickly. Tell the public so they can know. Speak right to them, please.
All right, I tell you this, it takes so much for me not to publicly blast the people responsible for the travesty that I feel that happened with that project. I know them by name. I could tell you who they are. I can give you their numbers, email them. But anyways, almost $1.4 million are put into that building. The building was supposed to be named after her, and it sits dormant almost 5, 6. My daughter's 8. Beverly died 8 years ago. My daughter was born the same year Beverly died. And that building, you know, to us, that's the last piece of thing that we have to remember our aunt by, for what she meant to this community. We see signs and names of people we don't even know up in this area, but we know what she did for this area and don't see anything that represents her. So that building really hurts because
that building, that old library, is supposed to be named the Beverly Gray.
It's technically named the Beverly Gray Resource Center, but they won't put a name on it.
They won't put a name on it. And you know what, public? You know what, out there in these last few minutes? That's great. That's a great point. That's why it's great to understand. That's another thing that we can do when you come to the website and register on the show. Because every time you register, if you come down, we'll say that every time you register, that's a vote for the people to come together to have Beverly Gray's name put on that building like it should be. So that should be one of the things that we can come together and we can galvanize ourselves to have. Now, that's one common goal that we can all focus on, because the whole reason this place is here is because of Beverly Gray. She wanted to improve our community. She wanted to improve Jefferson Avenue. We have the Frank Merriweather Library. We have here the Apollo, and we have the building supposed to be named after her that hasn't been used for anything. It was done, all the money was put into it, and the building is just sitting here. Now, you know, it's a blessed thing that I walked in here yesterday and was able to see DT here and be able to get this story from him, the Beverly Gray story. In the future, we plan on doing a documentary on Beverly Gray, on her life, on the great things that she done.
And we want to, you know, and I want to go, and I want anybody out there who is interested in being part of that. I definitely want to be able to reach you and have you reach me, because I know there's a lot of people out there who love Beverly, and I would love to hear your stories about Beverly.
So if you want to be a part of it too, you know, go to the website, put it down there, register. You know what I mean? Go to my email, PeopleEmpowerment, please. So remember to pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Nate Boyd from People Empowerment. Have a great day.